You aware of this, bro? This is a wild situation. A whole generation gets pumped up with, "You're special, you're amazing." Then they worked way harder than they were supposed to, and somehow ended up completely unable to sustain a life that felt totally normal to the generation before them. Bro, this was a psychology experiment without anyone's consent. They said, the world is a playground, but turns out we weren't the players. We were the broken seesaw in the park. Too much weight on top, nothing keeping it balanced. Yet they told us to use your potential. We're talking about millennials, born between 1981 and 1996. And don't roll your eyes just yet, hear me out, because this whole thing is heading somewhere genuinely nauseating that you haven't considered. Millennials became the first generation in American history, and globally, expected to be worse off economically than their parents. Pew Research confirmed this in 2020. So we've got this massive group of people walking around with success and failure tangled up in their heads at all times. Your whole childhood, they're telling you, you can be anything, you can win everything. Then you graduate straight into a recession, and that participation trophy suddenly turns into a master's degree that costs as much as a house used to. Follow your dreams, they said. The dreams are on Airbnb right now because they couldn't buy a place. Psychologist Twenge wrote Generation Me, a book examining exactly this. She found that millennials score higher on narcissism than previous generations. But here's the critical part, bro. Alongside that, their anxiety and depression scores are sky high too. So we have an entire generation that both thinks it's special and feels completely worthless at the same time. That's a trauma response with a social media profile, nothing else. I'm amazing, I soar, I'm a problem solver in the bio, while staring at the ceiling at 2 a.m. This generation was the test subject of the Self-Esteem movement that emerged in the 80s and 90s. Helicopter parents, the trophy for everyone mentality, being considered smart just for existing. None of this was done with bad intentions, bro. These were sincere parenting efforts made with the psychology knowledge of that era. Beautiful as an idea, wrong in execution. Just like putting spinach in a smoothie and saying, you won't even taste it. You taste it, bro. We all taste it. But this generation was in their 20s when the economy crashed in 2008. They fell into an economic reality completely different from the world they'd been prepared for. That shock alone was enough to hospitalize people. I'm not joking. Social media landed right during the adolescence and early adulthood years when millennials were forming their identities. Facebook, 2004. Instagram, 2010. So this generation learned how to become adults while simultaneously learning how to perform what they were living for an audience. Dr. Tim Kasser's research shows this. When people tie their self-esteem to external approval, their mental health collapses. Bro, you're running a 24/7 campaign for your own existence, and those polls never close. And you have no competitor, just your photos from last year, and they look better than you. Getting married, owning a home, and building a life, having kids, the classic stages of adulthood are either being delayed or skipped entirely. Research shows millennials want all of these things, but economic reality makes it impossible without family inheritance or a big stroke of luck. The result? A whole community in their 30s and 40s still waiting for real life to begin. When does life start? Asks the guy, 38 years old, holding avocado toast. Because if you can't buy a house, at least breakfast can be nice. Can you believe it, bro? There's actually a scientific name for it. Allostatic load. The state of a human body constantly preparing for something that never happens. Like being stuck on a loading screen your whole life. You're staring at the progress bar, and it hasn't moved a millimeter in years. You call the helpline, music plays, your queue number is 47. The effort equals results equation just didn't work out. Work hard, finish university, get a good job. This social contract no longer functions. When millennials arrived, university prices had gone up 10 times. Entry-level jobs required 5 years of experience. Bro, entry-level jobs required 5 years of experience. Just think about that. By that math, you'd need to start interning from birth. The end result? $80,000 to $100,000 in debt, condemned to the uninsured freelancer model. The psychological term for this is schema disruption. When your core beliefs about how the world works get violated, you don't just feel disappointed. Your entire perspective on institutions, authority, and the concept of a stable future gets completely rewired. This explains why millennials can be idealistic and distressed at the exact same time. They still constantly believe everything should be fair, they're just now aware that it won't be. Two emotions simultaneously, and the brain just says, "We're holding both," and moves on. Millennials became the first generation to change what therapy means. They see anxiety and depression as real health issues, not character flaws. But alongside that, they're objectively living under far more stress. And as if that wasn't enough, they're watching the world collapse and expected to be the solution without having any power to actually fix it. Just recycle, they say. Okay, I'm separating my plastic bottles. Is everything fixed now? Society turns around and asks, "Why are you all so anxious? Why aren't you buying houses?" Bro, millennial psychology is the most rational response possible from a person trying to survive in a world where the map and the terrain don't match. What else could have been expected? The people who drew the map keep saying, "It wasn't like this in our day." Yes, back in your day, a house cost 1 year's salary. Things really were different then.